Hey everybody, welcome to today's episode. Today's episode is going to be a little bit heavy, but I promise that I will deliver to you a great message that's going to, I think, help you make a different choice that will really can completely change your entire life. And the reason this is going to be a little bit heavy is that a lot has happened over the last few years in my life that has me really contemplating life and death. A little over a year ago, my father almost died because, in treating his Parkinson's, it was missed that he actually had a massive infection and was slipping into sepsis and really came about as close to death as you could possibly be. And so, a blessing for God that they caught it just in time, and he's doing really well today, actually. But then my grandmother has recently had a stroke several months ago, and has been in hospice care ever since, and is just a shell of herself, and it's really hard to see. And then yesterday, when a potential partner reached out to me, letting me know that they had terminal cancer, and my good friend and business partner Paul's wife had been in a car accident that could easily have taken her life, I woke up this morning with some pretty heavy thoughts. And as I usually try to do, I went to God for some insight onto, how can I make good use of the heaviness of all of these thoughts of life and death that I was having. And what God makes so clear in the Bible is this, and what he made so clear to me was that set before you is life and prosperity, but also death and destruction. But what he asks us to do is to choose life. And what I love about that is we have the power, not just, over the span of our life, and not just over the span of, a year or even a month or even a day. Every second, we have the power to choose life. And we have the power to create the future on a daily basis. What are we doing? What are we choosing? Are we choosing life, or are we choosing death? And I think part of the struggle for a lot of us is that we tend to see death as only the end of life. But what I think God is saying is that death is there to choose on a moment-by-moment basis. Only we don't always recognize it as death because it's slowly killing us. I don't know if you know, it's the story about if you put a frog into a pot of boiling water, they will immediately try to jump out. But if you put a frog into a simmering pot and let it raise to a boil over time, they will sit in that water until they're boiled to death, which is sort of gruesome, but it's an experiment that has been done that kind of, it shows what I'm trying to talk about here, because when we look at death as just this end of life thing and not on a moment to moment basis, we don't recognize that, there are things that are slowly killing us. What death is death can be just existing in life, knowing that you have more to give and do and be. Death can be settling. Death can be this zombie walk that a lot of us take through life. A lot of us, and I did this before, I discovered, how to create wealth in a different way for myself. I was zombie walking through life in this wake, work, eat, sleep routine, and I think a lot of us do that, but I think that's actually a slow death. Death is leaving all that we love on a daily basis, to give your time to things that don't really speak to your heart and desires. A lot of us, leave our families and the things that we love and the houses that we buy and, spend all this money on. We leave these things all day long to be in places that we don't really even want to be in. So, death can be ignoring these callings on your heart. But in all of these death choices is another choice, another power. It's a choice, and that power is to live. And on a grand scale, you don't always get to choose, whether you exist. In fact, you don't get to choose whether you exist, right? You're already here. You don't get to choose whether or not your physical body is going to die. That's coming. But on a moment-to-moment basis, you do get to choose life. And God said, choose life. Death and existence, they're going to happen by default. But every day, every single moment in every single day, we have the ability to choose life, to choose purpose, to choose impact, to choose passion, to choose excitement, to choose love, to choose life. And God also says this, choose life so that you and your children will live. And what we don't always think about is every single choice that we make, whether we're choosing life or whether we're choosing death, is affecting others. There are people, there are communities, there are causes that will thrive when we choose life. That's where I believe that the true beauty and the power of choosing life really, really happens. It's this positive, amazing impact that our choosing life has on others. And I fully believe that we are here to serve others in some sort of way, to use our skills, our tools, our passions, our resources in our heart to positively impact certain people or groups or causes that are speaking to our specific heart. It's my belief that it's just pulled at my heart on a daily basis and made me want to be more, to do more, to have more, to be able to give more. I got to the point in my life where I was tired of existing. I was tired of wasting time. I was tired of looking back in regret. I was tired of wasting the most beautiful thing that I've got, that we all have. We've got this life and we've got this love. And I think that, at some point, if something doesn't happen, it doesn't have to be something big. For me, when I really, really got tired of, that life of existing and that death of leaving my family on a daily basis, right? I got tired of that death of, not being able to really pursue the things that called to my heart. When it really hit home to me was when I'd been let go from my job right before Christmas. We had massive debt, lots of bills and stuff to pay. I was kind of freaking out a little bit, to be honest, but there's this picture that I have of my daughter and we're both sleeping on the couch, and we're sleeping on the same way, and she's laying on my chest, and we both got our arm up. But it was around that time that picture was taken that I decided that, yeah, it kind of stinks that I lost my job, and it stinks that we've got all this debt right now and the stress of trying to pay it, and we had creditors, hounding us down, and all this other sort of stuff was happening. But what I realized in that moment was that life to me was actually happening in a much bigger way than it had ever happened for me when I had the job, when we had more money, when we didn't have creditors calling us. I was actually experiencing more life with all of these setbacks, because what I realized is that I was getting to spend every single second with my daughter. I was getting able to spend way more time with my wife, who was already pregnant with my son, and I knew that I didn't want to have to leave my son. I didn't want to have to leave my daughter ever again. I didn't want to have to leave my wife and my home, and I didn't want to have to leave my passions and all of these things on the table, because I was, pursuing what really this other choice to me had always felt like death. I never really related to the job world. I never wanted to be I couldn't get past the fact that why am I spending all of this time and energy and effort on things that I don't love and with people that I don't love and doing things that I don't love, right? And away from everything that I really truly loved. And that's for me when I started to choose life. So the point of this episode is really to let you know you've got a choice, but to also ask you, are you tired too? And if you are, all you've got to do is choose a different choice. Death is coming. You are already existing. You can't do anything about those two things. But while you're here, you can, instead of constantly feel like you're dying and making choices that put you closer to, death on this moment to moment basis, right? Because I think it adds up over time. It's not just death is coming, it's that death in every single moment and every single choice, there is life and death. So are you choosing death right now, or are you fully alive and living and impacting the people around the world in the amazing ways that you're supposed to be? And it's funny because while I was having all of these thoughts today, a conversation came up to tie this not into just your life, but to tie it into, building businesses and marketing and all that sort of stuff. And a conversation came up about the use of timers in marketing, which I thought was pretty relevant to this concept of, time and what we're doing with our time. Are we choosing life? Are we choosing death? And that really specifically impacts how we're using our time. But while I think timers can be really effective at getting people to make short-term buying decisions, I've never seen over the last nearly two decades that they result in massive long-term change in people. Because if you aren't fully aware of the timer that's on your life right now, if you aren't aware of the consequences of ignoring that timer, but also the blessings that come in choosing life and fighting to make an impact with the time you have, I can't help you. And that's why I personally struggle with things like timers on websites and forcing you to take some sort of action that, you may or may not be ready to take yet, even though it's one of the most effective marketing tactics. Because I mostly feel that if we don't come to the belief on our own that we need to start fighting for and making the most of our time, just like when I came to that realization when I was, laying on the couch with my daughter, if something or some things aren't important enough to us to maximize every second we have, at some point sooner than later, we're just going to go back to the default setting. I could have easily gone back to another job that I didn't love, that took me away from my family, that took me away from, my callings, that took me away from my home. I could have easily done that. And I think at some point, if we make a decision that's not one that we sort of came to on our own, that's what we do. We go back into, zombie walking, like time is standing still because we're standing still. But time isn't standing still. And so I made this episode today with the hopes that you start choosing life on a daily basis. But not just choosing it, fighting for it. Because I know you have dreams. You wouldn't be here listening to this if you didn't. But you have to be careful to not be so complacent that you end up sleeping through those dreams. So I ask you the same thing that I believe that God has asked of you, to choose life, to choose love. And in doing so, I believe that you're going to unlock the very best version of yourself on a daily basis. I believe that you're going to live with greater passion and greater excitement. You're going to be more fully free and alive, and you'll have the positive impact on the world that you were created to make. I fully believe there is some reason you're here. There are people, there are communities, there are causes that you are meant to have massive positive impact on. And I'm speaking from experience and own personal belief that if you can step into and choose life on a daily basis, that you are going to step into that passion and excitement and that feeling of freedom and being fully alive, and you are going to have the impact on the world that you were created to make. So again, I ask you to recognize that every single second we are choosing between death and life. And I ask you today to choose life and to choose love. Hey, I love you. I hope you got some value out of that episode. I'm so excited to see what you do with your life when you choose life in every second of every day. I will talk to you soon.